Okay, it should be recording. Okay, so I'm going to invite a few people in the audience to share how they became the boss. And also, if you haven't, your thoughts on how do people become bosses. You don't normally join an organization fresh out of university being a boss, not normally. So how else do you become bosses? Any thoughts? I'll keep the chat open. Please use the chat library. Please use the hands up or unmute yourself and speak. There's only a small group of us, so as long as it's one after the other, I'm pretty happy to give people a free hand. Anyone wants to talk about their experiences or in general how they became bosses?
I can go.
Sure, Julia.
The way I became a boss was actually at the beginning taking more responsibilities without having any direct reports. That was at the beginning, taking more responsibilities, and then maybe contacting or having somebody indirectly, indirect reports. And then at one point, apparently I was so good at what I was doing that they decided, the company where I was working, they decided that I could be a good leader, manager, etc. And also, I think has to do with encouraging. For example, I'm a type of boss that I encourage the people to, I always call them, at the beginning I used to call them, some of my team members, like a raw diamond that needed some polishing. And then now I call them my business partners. So yeah, this is how I became a boss. It started with more responsibilities, pushing is hard work, pushing much more and more and achieving great results. And that's how somehow, yes, I got to that position. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Julia. I've also got some comments about hard work, dedication, education, ethics, communication, wanting to lead a team, betterment of the company. All that is fantastic. So I'll kind of put up 4 bullet points which talk about how people become bosses. So there's typically reward for a lot of contribution. So you start off as a contributor, so a person who's doing tasks, who's contributing, and you do lots of it. People say, okay, you've been doing lots of this, let's make you the boss. There's also the tenure and natural promotion. You are the oldest, or rather the most tenured person in the team. And so when there is a vacancy, you're kind of first off the queue. So it's like almost like a natural promotion. You're also hired from the outside as a manager. Sometimes, you've got some experience, you come straight in as a manager. Sometimes in very rare occasions, maybe post an MBA or some of those high qualifications, you come in just as a pure manager leader. And that's rare, but it has happened. So those are kind of things that typically you become a manager in. So then what are the typical challenges you face, especially if you look at some of the things I've highlighted in terms of when you suddenly, as a reward, as a natural promotion, or you're coming from outside, you're trained, how does that work in terms of the initial challenges you face? I mean, Julia, I don't know if you want to give your experiences, because you had that career path and others want to pitch in. What are the typical challenges?
Well, for me, it all depends on the context. For example, what I notice is with rewards for a lot of contribution, and you become the boss or you become a manager, what happens is that you're going to get much more work, right? Much more responsibilities. Natural promotion, the same thing. What I notice is, especially for me, the way I see it is when you are coming from the team and you get promoted as being the manager. That is a huge challenge. It's on its own, because
Yeah.
what happens is you get all this professional jealousy. You get like, why this person, why not me, etc., etc. That's one thing. And sometimes some people, they make it a little bit more challenges for you. And the other thing is, when you come from outside, yes, you come from with a fresh mind, and you might be able to absorb quickly what is going on in the company or in the team, etc. But the challenge that you have is that also you might have resilience from the people, because some people will say, but this person is new, they have no idea how we work or what is the company all about, etc. So they have the positives and negatives. I wouldn't say that has much more negative than positive. I think it all depends how you see at it, how you look at it. But yeah, those were some of my experiences.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Julia. I mean, anyone else wants to comment or share anything different? Just okay. So let me talk about what typically, as an industry-wide, as across the board, when people listening, some challenges that people have told me. I did introduce myself earlier on. I did see the slide. I'm also a coach. I do coach executive leaders as well, and bosses. I've done that before. So typical challenges when you suddenly become a boss. Sometimes it's also about loss of control. I know Delia mentioned about we do a lot of contribution, but when you go a level up, it's the people that report to you that are acting as the contributors. And so it is a shift in your mindset from being the contributor, from pressing the buttons, writing the emails, doing the tasks, to manage people who are doing the task. And sometimes it's easier to do than to have people do it as you want them to do. It's so easier just to, and that's where the loss of control comes in. Sometimes, you know, it's you feel, oh, why can't these things happen? And Julia made a great point, because when you become before, when you're a contributor, you're part of a team. So let's say it's a team of 5 people. You're doing one person's role in the team of 5. When you become the manager, all 5 are under you, and their whole collective responsibility is your responsibility. You can't do the tasks of 5 people. And that's where that shift from a doer to someone who's managing is a huge challenge. And that's where a loss of control becomes imminent. For the same reason across the 5, I mean, if you think about when you're doing an individual contributor's role as part of a team, you develop a lot of expertise in the role, but your peers are also developing their own expertise. When you go one level above, it's 5 times, 6 times whatever the size of your team is, that much more expertise in the team, and it's more likely you no longer are the expert on everything across the team. Again, these are typical challenges you face. Not everyone faces every challenge, but these are typical symptoms. Then the other effect I want to talk about specifically when you become a manager and you're in the middle tier is the middleman effect. And the middleman effect, what I'd like to describe it is, you are in the middle. You don't do the tasks, and you don't get to really decide the complete direction. You're given direction from the top, and the people who do it are below. So you're kind of in the middle. So your sphere of influence is different than when you are either right at the top or when you're the contributor. And that creates an interesting dynamic that takes a lot of getting used to when you become the boss. And the last thing which I want to really emphasize on, when you're contributing, you always look at your boss and you think, oh, he's going to give me instruction, I have to follow the instruction, etc. And then suddenly you are in the chair giving instructions, and you can seek authority, but it's a big new challenge to win the commitment in terms of the instruction and the following of those instructions and all your thoughts. So those are some of the interesting things that I find when people become bosses, the challenges they face, how the dynamic changes for people who suddenly go into management, and how it requires adaptation. Before I even go into the concepts, the things that worked for you as a contributor can sometimes be the most challenging and sometimes can be the inhibitors in your natural development as a boss. And that's something that are very important to really digest. The things that you did brilliantly that got you the reward can sometimes be your biggest challenges when you go one level above, because suddenly it's no longer a reward. It's not even the job you used to do. It's a brand new job. The skill sets, the day-to-day activities, everything is brand new. And everything you knew before, a lot of it is different when you become the boss. Any initial comments or observations anyone wants to make?
If I may, oh, I think
Sure.
Troll wants to say something.
Sure. Go ahead, Julia.
I thought Troll wanted to say something.
Oh.
Okay. No,
Okay.
you said something very important, and I've been seeing it myself in different companies. I'm a customer service and process management manager, process improvement manager. And what I have noticed is in different companies, and I don't know if the rest of the people could say that depending on the experience, but what I have noticed is depending on the company and the culture of the company, how they position the manager, especially if they have people, direct reports, it can differentiate in other companies, right? So what happened is, what I noticed is in some companies, you as a manager, yes, you have people under you and you're the manager, but you are a doer, right? So
absolutely.
You're more focused in, and I call it always like 70% in administrative job, so you're the doer, and 30% is coaching, developing the people, finding strategies, etc. And then you have other companies where the percentages all around is different, and then you need to find the balance. But what I have noticed as well, it's in some cases when you are the doer, I believe it gets easier when you have a team because you are part of the doer, right? To achieve the goals. And everybody feels like, okay, we are all the same, etc. But when you have this a little higher level of responsibility, that you are not the doer, but you are the one who is not having the control, but is managing, is encouraging, etc. That is when sometimes also gets really tricky. That is my personal opinion. That's what I have lived in different companies where the position, even though I was the manager and had people under me, it's different.
And thank you for that. And what I will say is, as I go through the rest of the slides, and there's about 4 or 5 principles I'm going to introduce in a minute, is even that 20% that you do and the 30% that you do that makes it easier actually has a negative correlationship with how well you manage. But bear with me, I will introduce why and how in the next few slides, and how I would say that 70% of management, you use the word encouraging, coaching, that is actually a complete full-time job that requires a full 100% commitment. But bear with me, and I will introduce that and validate the theory in the subsequent slides, and then you can come back and give in your thoughts, Julia. Okay, so, and the last thing, I also want to talk about is trust. Getting the trust. When you're the contributor, you got a specific area of sphere of influence. People trust you, you trust people. When you become the manager, that dynamic has the risk of being changing. And adapting to that and building trust across stakeholders, your team, etc., is usually a huge challenge as well. So, what are the main definitions and concepts? I'm going to introduce 4 concepts about being a good boss. Now, there is lots and lots of materials out there, lots of concepts, lots of leadership material, lots of reviews, etc. So I could go on and really for a long time, we could have 2-day workshops on this. But I wanted to keep it, as for people who follow my presentation, I like to keep it simple, but try and deliver powerful message. So I'm going to focus on 4 aspects of being the boss, which are leadership, management, motivation, and communication. And I'm going to sort of break them down one by one into these 4 concepts and try and promote simple steps that just increase your effectiveness as a boss. There'll be some assumptions here. The first assumption, and someone else pointed it out quite categorically, you should have a desire to be the boss. If you don't want to be the boss, if you're being pushed up and you never really wanted it in the first place, a lot of this is almost academic in a way, because unless you really want to be that leader, and if you don't feel passionate about that, it's a bit of a challenge to get into that. The second thing is, it might have come to you as a reward, but it's not a reward. You can't treat it as an entitlement or a reward. So frequently, we see bosses around us who got promoted and their chests are puffing and they feel that, yes, I am now the boss. I have got recognition and reward by being the boss. Being a boss is not a reward, it's a responsibility. And if you want to be a better boss, it is crucial to understand and digest that. It's much more difficult than it looks. But for people who follow my presentations, it's my cliche, easy is nothing. And I'm going to introduce when I talk about the concepts, I'm going to try and accentuate why it's so difficult. With that, let's go into each of those concepts. We'll start with leadership. Okay. So I define my leadership and how to become a better leader in kind of 3 simple verticals. Okay. And the verticals I want to talk about is about developing a vision for your team. Okay. Too often than not, people just carry on what they're doing without having a clear definition of purpose. What is it they're doing? What is it they're achieving? As a manager, as a leader, one of the simplest things you could do that creates better cohesion is to develop a vision for your team. It's such a crucial element. So how do you develop a vision? A vision typically is an answer to simple questions that are in a simple to explain sentence or 2 sentences. So what are those questions? First of all, how easily can you identify what does your team do? What is the purpose of your team? Who does it do it for? Okay. What is the benefit of whatever you do and whoever you do it for? And crucially, how do you get better? And importantly, because you're a manager and there are people above you, unless you have reached the top and you're the CEO, there are people above you and around you, how does it align with the wider organizational visions? If you have these 5 questions answered in a crisp, succinct, and powerful way, you have a vision. Why is this vision important? Because it gives your team purpose and it gives your team focus. Think of it this way. How many meetings do you go in a day where it's not part of what you believe is your core? How many meetings and tasks do you do that really someone's asked you to do something, you're just doing it, and you have no idea of how this fits in with what your team's responsibilities are? What is your team set up to do? Does it really come into the priority list? And a lot of times the effectiveness is impacted because you haven't clearly defined a vision that allows you to set priorities. So setting a vision for your team, ideally in collaboration with your team, goes a long way in increasing your effectiveness in the team and getting more focus and an easier mechanism of prioritizing tasks and activities. So how do you then, once you create the vision, what do you do with that, right? You got to find a way to live the vision, okay? You have to focus on the vision. Once you have, as a team, come up with a vision and everyone's happy about it, you got to focus on it. You got to make sure it's communicated both to your team and the stakeholders surrounding the team. You've got to get your sponsorship on that vision, and you got to make sure it's a passionate focus of the vision. A lot of times organizations do these exercises. There's a vision statement developed and it sits there on a board as a tick in the box exercise completed. That's no good. You've got to focus passionately and develop plans, habits, and activities that really build on that vision, because that's your starting point. Now you have a vision. You want to develop the plans and habits and activities that really say, okay, this is what my team does and what it does it for. How can I make sure I'm doing more of that in the day and more of that in the week? And how am I getting better and making sure it's delivering on its benefits for the key stakeholders? Think of every action you do in your job. Is it satisfying the purpose of those questions that you see on the left? And do you understand that? And think of how much more powerful and effective it is if you could align it to those questions. And as I mentioned, prioritization is a key benefit. And you got to prioritize more and spend the majority, if not in a utopian way, all of your time on that vision. Again, living the vision includes a constant improvement and validation of your vision. There's nothing to say the vision can't be developed and enhanced, but make sure it's not a gradual scope creep and it's not just become a wide catch-all. It's something that you associate with, you feel it, and it links to the job of your team. And typically, if you're the boss, and this is a theme I'm going to repeat in a lot of the other factors, you've got to find a mechanism to reward behavior that develops that vision. And that's crucial. And you, as a boss, have to absolutely walk the talk. You know, a lot of times there's this exercise, the team does the vision, there's such a goal set, and here you see the manager gone off on meetings that really don't align with the vision, doing things that are out of scope of the vision, spending a lot of time in activities that don't align to the vision. That doesn't work. As a boss, you set the example. And you got to make sure you reward and encourage the people who develop and walk the vision. Any questions on the leadership and the three themes around vision that I have articulated? I can't see the hands, but if there is anyone, please unmute yourself and speak. Okay, I'll take that as a no. I want
Maybe
some Sorry?
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Can you see? Yeah. I mean, it would be a good idea to maybe mention a concrete example, you know, like a problem that, because what you're saying is probably true, but it's quite general, you know, like I'll be curious, a problem that you had personally yourself and how you came up with it and use that to demonstrate what you just said.
Fantastic, because I pressed the button for the next item on the agenda, and that's an exercise. And I was about to say, can I have a couple of volunteers in their job? And what we will do is collaboratively try and build that vision. Now, we might not come in the whole vision in like a 5-minute exercise or a 3-minute exercise, but you'll get the answer to precisely that question in how you drive that vision. And that exercise can take hours. It depends on your team and what you do, but I'll give you a taster for it if I can have a couple of volunteers. So can I have a couple of volunteers?
Sure, I can be a volunteer.
Sure. Okay, so let me just see if I know who's speaking. Oh, there you are. So that's Daniel, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So Daniel, let's start from the beginning. What does your team do? Can you come up with a statement that just articulates what your team does?
I create subscription websites.
Okay, so that's you as a contributor, but let's
Yeah,
build that.
I have people that work for me on that.
Perfect. So you have a team that builds a subscription website.
Yes.
Okay, right? Now,
Yes.
who are the customers of that subscription website?
I mean, for example, one of them is about booking restaurants. So it's about people that like to go to restaurants and also network with other people.
Okay, so let's build this up. So your starting point is, I'm just going to take a little note. Your starting point is the activity you do is build a subscription website.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little focused in that it's a build a website, but it's specific towards subscription.
Yes.
And the customers are?
People that go to restaurants for it.
So is it specific around restaurants?
I mean, I have several subscriptions, but we can talk about one, so it doesn't take forever.
And that's where
it's about
and
restaurants.
that's key, by the way, Daniel. You need to have a vision that gives you the focus. Let's, for the purpose of the exercise, shortcut that and say it's a subscription for restaurant business. So your starting point, what you do is build a subscription website geared towards restaurants. Who are the customers? Are the customers the restaurants or the people going to the restaurant?
The people going to the restaurant.
Perfect. So the customers are general people who go to the restaurants. Okay, can you think of a collective name for that group of people? What's a collective name? Customers or diners?
Yeah, diners. Call them diners.
Okay. So diners are your customers, right? So build a restaurant-based subscription website for diners. So what is the benefit of this subscription-based restaurant website for diners?
So basically, I divide it into like kind of two parts. So like the obvious benefit is when they join, if they pay just 1 month subscription, which is £6, they get a free dinner, which is worth £33. So it sounds like a good deal, right? To join. What do you think?
Yes, but Can you
Yeah.
articulate that in a benefit? Is it just
Well,
giving diners better deals?
yeah. So the first part is the acquiring of customers, because I figured out the second part may be more difficult for people to understand. That's why I start with the first part, which is £6 to get free dinner. And the second part is so this is my acquiring customers, and then the second part is retention. You don't want them to unsubscribe immediately after. As long as they stay customers, I make a lot more than the £30 I lose. So the second part is, well, for example, I want to create events where half the people are from a certain nation, so which is why Khan International is a good platform. So let's say half the people are French, or half the people are Italian, or half the people are German or Chinese or Indian. And this way, every time you go to one of these events, you get to meet, if you're not one of these people, like you get to meet many of these people, or if you're one of these people, you get to meet many people like you, many French people, many Italian people. So this is what I think is a benefit.
So let me stop you there, Daniel.
Yeah.
Let's take it a step above.
Yeah.
Who are your clients? So who is the one who's
The
paying you
customers.
money?
The customers are paying money. They
Okay,
pay subscription. So I mean, I make £6 monthly subscription plus 10% from what the restaurant gets. So, but only the customer pays.
But the restaurant also contributes to your revenue?
No. I mean, I take 10% commission if you, I don't know how you want to call it, but I think it's still the customers that pay, So if the customers don't pay, the restaurant, I don't make any money, I give money to the restaurant. So I give 90% of the money to the restaurant, and I make 6% of the £6 membership fee.
And that's interesting, because if I asked you to pick your customer, is it the diner, is it the restaurant, or a combination of both? Because you need the restaurant to subscribe or be part of the ecosystem for the customer to participate, right?
Yeah, but I don't think it's fair. Like if you don't want to say that the customer of Apple is the Argos store that sells the iPhone. The customer of Apple is the people, So even though the store sells that, I'd say it's fair to say the customers are the customers.
That's okay.
The people that die. Yeah.
That's okay. Let's move on. Let's assume that from your argument and your discussion, you're doing something that's focused towards the diners, and that's important. So your focus of all your activities is towards the diners. So what is the benefit? You talked about offers. So that's the benefit to the subscriber diner.
Yeah.
Okay. So he gets better offers. What is the benefit of that offer? Is it just saving money, or is there more to the offering?
Well, so it's first, at the first time is the saving money, which is like quite an obvious benefit. Like for £6 they get a dinner for £30. And the second thing is the events are, you get to meet people from a certain nation. That's the idea, So you get to meet French people or Italian. So it's like French event, Italian event, and so on. So that's it's very similar to internationals,
I get it. So what is a word that you can describe for that activity, getting and meeting people? For the networking, that's great. So you got build a subscription-based website for diners that drives retention, discounts, and helps them build a network.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the benefit. How do you get better at this service? What's your improvement plan? How do you constantly be better at this? Because you can't stay the same.
I mean, I see the business as a triangle between platform, customer, buyers and sellers. The sellers are kind of the restaurants, and the buyers are, the diners. So you start with, you make a kind of a basic platform, and then the next step is to get the sellers, so get the restaurants to agree. I mean, I would love to go to Gordon Ramsay for 30 pounds, but I can't. But I find other restaurants that are quite nice. So, and then the third step is to get the people to subscribe and come. And then after the third step, I just repeat all steps. So I make the website better, I get more restaurants, and I get more subscribers. And I just keep repeating these 3 steps until I have 200 million subscribers like Netflix. You know?
So if I asked you for a set of words, one sentence that talks about what is your continuous improvement process, how would you like to represent that?
I don't know, just go around the triangle 1,000
Okay.
times. Yeah.
So your vision now has become build a subscription restaurant-based website for
Yes.
diners that drives retentions, provides networking, and constantly evolves in a triangulated fashion.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how you have developed your vision. Now, once you have developed that, you then analyze how much of your day is spent in those key elements. You've now identified your customer. It's the diners, not the restaurants.
Mhm.
You said it's a subscription service. How much are you focused on the subscription activity? How much are you driving the retention and the networking? You now have, in a simple sentence, a focus.
Mhm.
And then when you do your activities and you develop your team and you're talking to your team and you're evaluating, you've got a clear statement that tells you all the things that are going around and for you to focus and prioritize.
Yes.
So anyone else who observed that exercise want to make a comment on it?
I just thought was amazing. It's I never thought it like that, if I may, but I like the way you were trying to get out of the questions, the answers, in order to build it into a vision. So at the end of the day, it's going to be like, what would be your purpose, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank
And
you
if you
for that.
have that, everyone in your team looks up to that and they know what they're working towards. So that's the leadership, and it's one aspect of the leadership. That's not everything about the leadership. Like I said, I'm going to introduce simple concepts, but try and make it powerful. So that's the leadership piece. I'll move on to the management piece, right? So what is management piece? So one thing I would say, and this is the point I wanted to emphasize when I talked about contributions, it's all about developing the processes to build your vision. It's a headline statement. Don't be the contributor, especially if you have moved from a contributor to a manager. The biggest challenge is to stop contributing. The more you contribute, the more you are impeding the effectiveness of the team and their growth and their ability to develop in their roles and become their own experts. Think of it when you first joined the team and when you were first doing the activities, how important it was for you to learn and get your hands dirty in the tasks. As a manager, the more you contribute, the more you are stopping the development of your team. It's a very, very crucial thing, and it's easy to slip into it. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of activities, a lot of stuff going on. You've got this little thing to do, and you can't find your team members, or it's going to take you a long time to teach them, or everything. You just go ahead and do it. Shortcut, I need to get out of this stress. It happens to all of us. But bear in mind that every exception you make is inhibiting the development of your team. Every deviance of processes you have developed will inhibit the effectiveness of that process. Again, the expertise. You know a lot. Don't be the person everyone's being rushed to for advice. Try and resist that. If you really know a lot, try and teach a few areas of people with some expertise. and encourage that information exchange within your team. Don't be the one person that everyone's coming to for advice, because then you will be the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Again, about the effectiveness. And also the second thing, as a manager, it's about really, really passionately understanding your team. You know, each individual in your team is a unique resource that contributes in a unique way towards the sum of the team. There is no shortcut. There is the time you need to spend with each person in your team. The more time you spend, the better it is you understand the individuals. So also other thing I'm going to say is your one-to-one, when you regularly engage with each and every team member, make sure it's very customized to that team member, and it's adaptable and it's flexible. Team meetings, when everyone's together, that should be more towards standardization. So everyone understands and knows how the meeting would be. The one-to-ones, make sure it's customized to what the individual and what works best as a dynamic between you and that individual. Always keep a track of improvements and set up a system of reward and recognition. And I'm going to talk about reward and recognition a little more in motivation, but keeping a track and understanding the processes and how you're getting better, making sure it's all understood. I say document, I don't necessarily mean go write reams and reams of process docs and so on, but make sure people understand it, there's standardization, and there is a record of how everyone's getting better. Any questions on management?
Can I say something?
Sure.
I just want to say that it really depends on the business, but for what I do, I would never allow people to interfere with my vision. So like, I would never release something that I'm not happy with. You know, like if let's say one of my developers think that something should be different, that's fine. I don't mind hearing them, listening, discussing. But in the end, if I disagree, it's my vision that is going to prevail and not theirs. So I don't mind being the bottleneck. I don't mind being the one that tells everyone keep changing things until it becomes my vision. But that's my business. If somebody wants to run their business in a different way, they could be right.
So I'm glad you brought it up that way. That's a fantastic representation of what you're saying. So first of all, let's take a step back. At no point in this management steps that I've identified does it say that the employee, the person, has a right to override what your ideas are. The whole idea of these processes is to make that alignment between your thoughts, your vision, and their ideas to build that vision. You've just given me a fantastic example of why that vision is important. If that vision is something you have clearly articulated, it's clearly defined, then the chances of them thinking of something so dramatically different that you don't agree with are going to be reduced. Okay, and that's,
I mean, yeah,
sorry?
I'd say constantly people that work for me disagree with me, like all the time. But I mean, that's the way it is. You know, I'm the boss. So, but as I said, I mean, this is the way so basically, I run my company in the exact opposite way that you suggested, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong. It could just mean that I'm right for my business and you may be right for your business.
So Daniel, what I'll suggest is all of this is a tool set, right? You don't have to follow all of this exactly like it's described. You pick the stuff that you like and you feel will help you be better. So it's not about what is right and what is wrong. It's about what you do, but an opportunity for you to be better. And out of the 20 things I'm talking about, maybe it's only one thing or two things, or maybe it's 10 things, or maybe it's none of them. That's also fine. But it's an opportunity to at least understand that these tool sets exist, and you choose which one to use in order to be a better boss. And so it's really critical to really bring that point up. You can
it would be nice.
Sorry.
It would be nice to hear somebody else. I don't want to. I mean, I just didn't want to be, because you mentioned if somebody has a point, and I didn't want to be like a one-way conversation. So that's why I stepped in. But it would be nice if somebody completely disagrees with me or says that they run their business in the exact opposite way, and they let their employees basically make decisions and so on. It would be nice if we can hear how somebody else does things,
Sure.
so it's not just...
Absolutely. But I'll just say something else, Daniel. I invite you to consider that your style of management, whatever you believe, and you run a successful business, I'm sure you do, and you're running it well as a team, but I'm inviting you to consider you're probably following some of the stuff naturally anyway. But I will move on from that point. It's up to you to agree or not to agree. Anyone else wants to bring their experience in terms of the vision and the management so far that I talked about?
Prakash, if I may
Sure.
add something. I happen to be a project manager, and concerning the point that your speaker just before just mentioned, one of the things that I do as a project manager, because I have to deal with teams with different skill sets, is that I consider my team members to be the experts in their field. And as you had said at the very beginning, I do not have the knowledge in each and every single expertise that that my team has in terms of their expertise in their different fields. So I give leeway to my team to manage whatever it is that they have to deliver to me. I give them that leeway, and one of the things that I try not to do is to micromanage, because nobody likes to be micromanaged. And I give them my trust, but at the same time, I want them to trust me. And so I just give them, a bit of freedom so that they can, if they tell me it's better for me to do, to deliver what it is that you're asking for me to do, I'll deliver it this way rather than that way. I'll listen to them. And if it makes sense, I will accept. But for me, it's important to give my team some leeway, because I want them to also know that they have a say in what's going on in the project. That's just what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Sounds fantastic, Annie. So let me ask you a question on that. How can you get better?
How can I get better
Yes.
in terms of managing my team?
Yes.
I think one of the things that is coming up, well, it's not coming up, but it's already there. It's what is called agility. And one of the things with agility is that you have to have, it's another way of having an open communication with your team. So you're kind of, in essence, you're kind of over communicating with your team, where every morning you'll have a sprint where you get the team together and you make sure that the team is in agreement for, what needs to be done today. What was done yesterday? Was there any hurdles? Is there something that we need to address? So that, in essence, is another way to kind of over communicate and make sure that you have really the pulse of what's going on in the project.
Okay, sounds fantastic. So that's another tool that you're using to improve the dynamics of the team.
That's right.
Exactly. So again, all of these are excellent ideas and thoughts. I want to mention a little bit about the term micromanage. I know a lot of us resonate with that, but I'm almost going to invite you to not make that too much of a cliche and almost move away from that. Ultimately, we all work in a balance of enablement and instruction. No one works in a complete, to Daniel's point earlier on, no one knows everything. So blanket enablement without any instruction doesn't work. No one is ever, even the most toughest boss, is not fully instructional. There is always an element of enablement. So the idea about micromanagement is about finding the balance. And as I've emphasized in the one-to-ones and the fact that every individual is different, is finding the right balance as two individuals, the boss and the reportee, between instruction and enablement. And that's the important point. The word, the micromanagement, is basically when you feel as the recipient, the balance is too far towards instruction and not enough towards enablement. But that doesn't mean everyone will agree to that, and it's the same for everyone. So I'll always try and not paint the brush, to use that word, but to understand that it's something of a sensitivity between you and your boss, or you and your direct report. And it's something about managing and communicating where the optimal comfort level is for both parties between instruction and enablement. I'll let you digest that for a second, but it's a very important thing when you use these standard terms. They're very powerful because people relate to them, but be careful of just going into a cliche and say, oh, that boss is bad because he's micromanaging. And as a boss, be careful of slipping too much into instruction and not recognizing that the person who's the recipient of the instruction is not feeling enabled. So both sides of the story is important. And that's where there's no substitute for a lot of time and effort in the person. So motivation, okay? Again, I'm going to ask a quick poll. Anyone wants to volunteer an example where they were severely motivated by their boss and what happened? Okay, we have a lot of unmotivated people. Never had a great boss motivated them, maybe. But anyone wants to just reflect back and bring out an example where they felt slightly motivated by a boss and they thought, okay, I feel enabled. And it doesn't have to be for something the boss did, okay? Let's open up that question. Think and talk about the scenario where you went into work on a particular day and you felt, heck, I am going to do a great job today. I feel really wonderful and I will feel motivated to do something.
Can I say?
Sure.
Prakash?
Yes.
All right. So I would be motivated if, for example, if my boss is appreciative of me for my task or for my job every day. I mean, even it's a regular routine job, but if somebody is appreciating, so that's what I do with my employees in my section. I do appreciate every day for them, whatever they're doing, and that keeps them motivated. You know, bonuses, salary increase, those kind of things, those are materialistic. That is not long lasting, but the appreciation is really worth for motivation.
Thank you very much for that. That's a great point. A reward and recognition, it's going to flash up loud and clear in the next few bullet points. There's no substitute for that. I'd stay clear of saying the salary is not, I mean, I understand what you're saying. The point is very valid. But again, I want to focus on the day-to-day reward and recognition that you give to your employees. That is crucial, and finding a balance is so important. And so how do you motivate people? And again, that also builds towards that. So you just answered the second question in terms of making sure you recognize your people. That's one way to do it. Any other thoughts around what else you can do to motivate people? Or the original question, when you felt motivated?
I can add complete that one, the second part. On the daily basis, if I meet them in the morning and I say hello and I talk about their problems. For example, if somebody was sick at his home, his or her home, or he or she had a problem. So if I just touch base of that issue for a few minutes and share those some moments with them and share their feelings, so that's also kind of motivation that the boss is supportive and he's really caring. He's taking care of them.
Fantastic example. I love the fact, and what I'd like to summarize what you just example is that connection and empathy, right? Connect with your team, with the individuals, and show empathy. I would caveat a little bit in saying that it's unique for every person on how much you want to connect and how much they want to be connected by you and how much they want to put their personal. But as a general rule, you want to understand the optimal connectivity and make sure you're always showcasing empathy. And that's a point I want to really drive home. It's not a one size fits all, right? It's very customized, and you've got to be very agile as a manager and as a boss to recognize what is the optimal size that fits each individual and how does it work as a team. And in order to do that, you need to really learn each individual very deeply. And there's no shortcut to that. It requires time, it requires effort, it requires a lot of sensitivity, it requires how you're communicating, which I'll talk about in more detail. It requires flexibility on your side and a lot of self-awareness. You got to show that you care, but the way you show that is unique and sometimes distinct to each individual. And this is a statement that I want to really, really emphasize. It sounds controversial, but actually it's very powerful. Okay? And the statement is, do not treat everyone equally, because that assumes everyone is equal. Okay? Everyone's not equal. You can't have an approach of treating everyone equally. And when I use the word treat, it's not about discrimination. It's not about negative elements of treatment. It's about positive elements. It's about building the connections with people. Every individual is unique and they like to be treated that way. No one likes to be just another person. And that's the importance of the statement, right? So make sure you're not treating everyone equally. Even a simple thing, make sure you're rewarding and recognizing. Some people, you could go every morning, oh, you're doing a great job, you're doing a great job. Some people want that every hour, and I'm exaggerating, but some people really need that. Other people might get put off by every hour, you're doing a great job, you'll be like, okay, this is just normal, I don't need that level of reward. So there's sensitivities and there's uniqueness on how you're rewarding and recognizing people. And that's crucial to find that balance point. And a lot of this is also being self-aware. I mean, I talked about rapport building in my previous sessions, about communication, about knowing your energy levels, about how you come across, etc. So a lot of this is not about the other person, it's also about you. And when I said about not treating everyone equally, another point I want to emphasize is make sure you recognize the top performers as such. Make sure they are getting the right kind of reward, but also make sure the rest are getting encouraged. It's a delicate balance. I wish I could say this to these people and say something else to the other people, and that formula will work. Unfortunately, no such formula exists. So you gotta find a way to make sure the top performers are still performing at their top, and the rest are not falling behind and feel motivated to reach that top. And that dynamic is the biggest challenge you face as a boss. And that self-awareness point, I touched on that a little earlier, is so crucial. You know, I'll give you a simple example. I remember we used to go into meetings, and I used to have team meetings, and I wanted to enable a process of contribution across the board. Instead of a formalized agenda by agenda, I used to keep it like a natural stand-up, open discussion kind of a thing. And I used to really encourage people to not open their laptops or their phones and to put them away. It's so easy. You're in severe pressure, you're doing things, you suddenly walked into the meeting, you brought your laptop or your phone, someone sends you a message, someone does something, you look it up, and you're quickly distracted. You don't realize it, you're doing it. Someone actually pointed out to me saying, boss, you're on a phone or you're on a computer, and it's like such a shock. Be very self-aware, because if you do not walk the talk, even in small things, it contributes negatively to how you are able to motivate people to do the things. People want to see you as a role model on at least the things you want them to do. Another thing which is very important, it's not all about you. Be very sensitive to how you deal with your team members. You're not always necessarily the solution. Don't keep pushing if something's not working. Give them the space. Look at alternate approaches, maybe other colleagues, other friends. Make sure you have a holistic view, and don't try to bang at a door that is a bit closed, and you're just banging on it and you're knocking it, and it's causing even more of a problem. Be very sensitive to that. Okay, and the other point, which is very, very crucial, make sure you deliver on all promises you make. You know, it's very easy when you're in a stressful situation just to say, okay, we'll do this later, or we'll do this, and make like a promise so that the pressure is off you. And then you go away and you assume people have forgotten. People do not forget. Don't escape from a difficult situation by making a promise just because you want to get out of that situation. Make sure if you're making a promise, you deliver. There's nothing that's more motivational than when you tell someone this is what's going to happen, and it happens. It's a huge positive influence on motivation. Any questions on motivation before I go into communication? Okay, let's go on to communication, which is the last concept.
I just want to say,
sure.
You know Gordon Ramsay, right?
Yes.
He has kind of the complete opposite approach to you. I mean, do you think that's, I mean, and he's very successful. So,
but like, if they say this is just a show, huh?
I'll come to both those points, and I think I understand your point. So I'm very resistant to saying that someone's doing the exact opposite, okay? Because I can't believe Gordon Ramsay does not deliver. I don't think he makes fake promises and just leaves. Okay, he comes across as a hard person.
I'm not saying that. I mean, of course, like, you know, you mentioned the two things.
It's very
like,
crucial.
What? Okay, it's not the exact opposite. I mean, one of the things you mentioned was deliver on your promises. Like, I think nobody here is gonna disagree with you. You know, nobody's gonna say don't do that. But when I said about what you said about like the way to motivate people is, you know, let them be and so on. Like, yeah, kind of. Gordon Ramsay is kind of the opposite. He's just shouts at people and they do things and it works.
I think there's an element, and Julia made that very point. There's an outer image. And also remember, I never said don't shout at people. Actually, I would say don't shout at people, but that's not the point. The point I'm making is you need to find as a boss, what is the approach that works with each individual. There are so many people who, as Gordon Ramsay's person, have thrown the towel in his face and told him to go fly a kite and walked out. And that approach hasn't worked. There's tons of them. Okay. Even then.
And I would like to.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I also would like to add something to, I believe it's Daniel's point.
Yeah.
I mean, do you really believe, talking about Gordon Ramsay, do you really believe that someone like Gordon Ramsay or Trump would not get better results if they had actually respected their team far more than they have? Do you really think that the results would be worse?
Not in a restaurant, 100% no. 100%.
Well, I would beg to disagree. I'm sorry, I would beg to disagree.
Yeah, actually, guys, can I just step in here for a while? Like, this is Kish here, Prakash. Let me just step in here to Zan.
Yes.
The gentleman's point of view in regards to how he would manage the team. Earlier, I wanted to say something, but I couldn't. I think that process only works very well if you have a smaller company. But if you want to go global, whatever Prakash is teaching is the standard that is being used across Amazon, Google, and everybody else that you can think of.
Gordon Ramsay has 500 people.
Hold on, not done yet. I personally met this Gordon Ramsay. He's not like that. So that's a reality show. He started this process because his dad left him when he was younger. And what you call that, his brother got into heroin. He's a heroin addict. And what happened is that he motivated himself to become a chef. Yes, he does have a good time. He does have some bad times. He has opened up a lot of different restaurants, but he needed corporate was this requirement, cybersecurity requirements. And he had to change his ways to make sure that he can communicate well. Whatever you see on a show, it's a show. Don't associate Gordon Ramsay to Trump. They're two different people, by the way.
I don't think a person can be in character for 20 years and just just only shout at people in character. I've met other chefs. I mean, it's as I said, it depends on the industry. But let's say when it comes to restaurants,
I still maintain my point. I still maintain my point to both the gentlemen. I still think that you can still get the same results by being respectful to your teammates, to your employees. If you just give them the proper instructions, and if you need to, because you're in a kitchen, you need to oversee what's being done, fine. But you don't need to insult the people. I don't believe that.
I agree with you. That is absolutely the way you should run your team. But the only way they're going to look up to you is you lead by example, is what Prakash say. You expect excellence from them. You got to give excellence. You got to let people work. You got to explain and train. You got to get people working on what's important and a few other things, which is actually part of the leading and motivating as a manager, which you've been trained across big corporations. So this whole idea about yelling and Zan, it's reality TV. That's all. Okay. In United States, it is not working anymore.
Yelling is not managing.
It's not. Absolutely right.
Can I just build a bridge to what Daniel is saying and what you guys say? Obviously, I agree with what you guys, that's what I'm talking about. But let me also build a bridge with Daniel. There are personalities and what works for you as a person, right? And your personality. And as I emphasized, you might not be able to do everything completely contrary to what your personality is and what your comfort is. Again, to the point I told you earlier on in the previous slide, when you want to be better, right? Everyone wants to be better. Gordon Ramsay is a successful TV personality. He's done whatever he's done, 500 people, as you said, restaurants. Mm-hmm. We don't know what the truth is and how he treats his employee, but let's take Daniel's side and assume that there is an element of he does shout at people and disrespect. He's achieved 500 people. He's got restaurants. I'm going to make an assumption that he wants to be better. Okay. And if he wants to be better, what are the 2 or 3 things out of everything I have showcased can he take to improve? And that is the key. Okay, you don't have to say that he's reached here and so he's done something opposite. Maybe true, may not be true. That's okay. But what are the tools he can pick up? Can he, as a person, be more respectful, shout less, and expect and believe that might increase wherever he is already? And that is the key point.
I mean, I'm not saying that it would work for maybe some businesses, but I think if you look at examples, I mean, you can imagine whatever you want in theory, but in practice, especially let's say the restaurant businesses, most of them are like that, you know. And
it might be the case. And again, I'm not, and one thing I want to really re-emphasize, I'm not being prescriptive and saying, do all of these things. And it's very important to understand that. I'm saying here are all things that work in many industries across many domains. Okay? If you want to believe that in your industry and your particular domain, none of it is relevant, that's your choice. That's okay.
Sure.
You might say 10% is relevant, and you might accept 10%. Some people might say 100% is relevant. It's your choice.
I would just like to make one last point as concerning the cooking industry, kitchen industry, whatever, cuisine. Let's take Jose Andres, who is the owner, well, I know one of his restaurants in Washington that I enjoy very much, Jaleo, but he's also very well known. His personality is completely different from Gordon Ramsay. And what I believe is that if Gordon Ramsay, at the end of the day, what happens in his kitchen, if what comes out of his kitchen does not taste good, then his business goes down the drain. So can he still get the results, the fine tasting meals, whatever, by being more respectful towards his employees? I believe so. That's just my last comment.
I mean, well, you can't really know unless you try, you know. So,
but okay, I'd like to intervene as well. I have to say I agree fully with what Annie says there. It's from my side, I see it's independent from the business you are in. I mean, if you treat your employees respectfully, you know, and if you leave them leeway, you know, to express themselves, you know, to thrive, I think this is how you are going to get the best of them. Obviously, it's all about style of management. Some people have more an authoritarian style of management. Some people have more an open style of management. Now, when you do that, what happens is if you've got people around the table, and again, Annie, I listened to what you were saying before, but I fully agree that, you know, the people in your team, they are the experts in their field. And what they're very, you know, what makes them thrive is if they've got the possibility to express themselves, express themselves. And, you know, if their ideas are implemented, obviously you as a boss, you've got to make judgments as well of, you know, what's right or not. But afterwards, you know, people who have the satisfaction of doing a job and then being recognized, the sky's the limit. They love the job, they love the company, and it's not about money and things like that. Of course, you have to reward the people, you know, how they should be rewarded. It means that obviously they do a good job. First think there's one word a lot of people or companies don't use enough. It is thank you. Just a simple word.
Yep.
Well, you can write it down. And I have to say, I don't know if my style is good, but very often, you know, when somebody is doing something great, I just said, you know, send a little thank you note. Just that, you know. Obviously, another thing is basically you would like to treat people the way you would like to be treated yourself. And it's all about that as well, you know. So again, but really, I don't think it's about industries, it's about personalities.
Yes.
The other thing is, if you don't listen, you know, if people come up with ideas, fine, you don't listen to them, what happens? You know, they will try once, suggestions, they will try twice, and afterwards this will be finished. It means that even if they have great ideas, even if they see a company going into the wall, well, they will say, I'm sorry, you know, they don't listen to me, it's their problem. So one has to be very careful of the way, you know, you say you look after the people in your team, because at the end of the day, if they're not happy, they're going to walk away. They're going to go to another company. And I think some studies, and perhaps Prakash will tell me if I'm right or not, but some studies have shown that a lot of the very successful companies are the ones who really encourage their employees to, you know, to come up with ideas and who are really open and who reward them. So, okay, this was my point.
No, I agree. By the way, I want to just call out something that Ingrid has written on the chat, and I just wanted to take a step back. Fantastic point. Yes?
Prakash, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but I know I'm interrupting and I should wait. But just what you were discussing, I wanted to make a point. I'm going to paste it here in the chat. Okay, you were discussing about how you treat your employees and whether you shout or you don't shout.
Nadia, that was exactly the point I was going to make. So we are both on the same page. I was going to read that out.
I'd like look. I just like to just 2 seconds. I've just posted a link in the chat, and this link is to an article. I'll tell you what the title of the article is. At 100 years old, the world's oldest billionaire still goes to the office every day. So this is what I've posted, this article. If you want to read about the 100-year-old billionaire who goes to the office every day. And I just want to read 2 sentences from the article. And it says, so this is the son of the billionaire, okay? The son of the billionaire. And he said, my father taught me one thing in Chinese, okay? And I'll explain it. It's Yi De Fu Ren. I don't know if Yi De Ru Fen. And I don't know if anyone speaks Chinese. That means you want people to obey you, not because of your authority, not because of your power, or because you are fierce, but more because of your integrity, your quality, that people actually respect you and listen to you. That's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely.
Very good, Nadia.
Absolutely.
I want to bring this back a little bit. I mean, like I said, the leadership and management, we could be 2 days here, and there's so many wonderful things out there. But I want to bring it back to something that Ingrid mentioned, and I want to just bring it back, and I want to thank her for that, because in one of the previous slides, the message I said is, do not treat everyone equally. I think a lot more safer way to articulate that is, do not treat everyone the same. I think equally is a more controversial word.
Yeah, I think so.
Everyone understands the message. And so thank you for that, Ingrid.
Yeah.
Just because if there are people in the call who are at the management level as well, you just don't even want to go there. If you can avoid it,
I fully agree, Ingrid. And thank you for pointing that out. I mean, I knock up these presentations myself. I don't really take so I'm typing as I'm thinking and creating the material. But thanks for that. That's a very valid and a very good point. But the message is still the same. It's just the usage of a more appropriate word.
Yes. And I know that everyone would understand what the intention is, but you just don't want it to come up in an investigation or something like that someone was going around talking about how the objective is not to treat everyone equally. Just, if you can avoid it, just do.
Perfect sense. Makes absolutely perfect sense. And I'm going to change my slides in case it's shared again, and make that, instead of don't treat everyone the equal, but say don't treat everyone the same. I think that's much better. Thank you for that. Okay,
thanks.
So let's last slide, and then I've got a couple of case studies if we have time, or I might just switch to Q&A. And the last principle is around communication. And the first point, I think Daniel and others spoke about it. It's such a capital and important point. If you don't want to follow anything else in this whole presentation, if there's one thing you can be better, if there's only one thing you want to pick, learn to listen better. There's nothing that, that's more powerful than that. If you can be a better listener, straight away, you're going to be a slightly better boss. So if there's one thing you can pick up on listening. And I don't know, some of you, if you have attended my active listening sessions, which I've talked about how to listen better, all of those principles are valid across the board. So listening is so crucial. And another point I wanted to emphasize, never try to manipulate. which is the same thing we're talking about earlier about promises. When you feel a tight situation, never try to sneak out of it by saying what is an escape route. Never try to get someone to do something by manipulating a sequence of words or sequence of sentences that you believe will create a response in that person. Make sure you never resist all temptations to be in that higher chair, looking down on your resources and say, if I say this, they will work hard. Never ever do that. Because most often than not, you will come across disingenuous, and that breaks down the communication. Again, be open, be honest, be very clear about your thoughts and feelings. Be natural, be as genuine as you can. If there's one thing about good leaders and successful people who have led and motivated people, it's a standard characteristic. They're open, they're honest, they're clear about their thoughts and feelings. But that green part, which I've highlighted on the slide, is crucial, is because you need to have it with skill. It's not a dump everything to everyone and say everything to everyone. You need to have a skill to expose your genuinity and being more appropriate. So that's crucial. And also one thing, it's a standalone point. When you write, make sure you're not writing when you got a strong emotion, either in anger or in frustration. The corporate world is littered with emails that on the day later, I'm sure the writer has regretted writing that. One thing, always try and remove emotion. Feel very angry, don't write the email down. Calm down and write it a little later, if at all possible. Be positive. I think just generally being positive is such a huge part of communication. There were examples given about being grateful, etc. Try and keep as much positivity as possible as a communication point, because that contributes to motivation, that contributes to the vision, everything. It creates a better environment. A 3-step in terms of every communication: always validate, encourage, and reward. And reward doesn't mean keep increasing their salaries. Reward could be just a recognition, a thank you. Okay. Another point, again, these are individual bullet points, standalone points in them. They're not all together. I want to keep it simple. Is try to develop a coaching style of communication. So if you see open questions, this is one of the first sessions I did. I've done 7 now, which is about how can you be a better coach to influence people around you. Asking open questions. You know the answer, but don't dump the answer. See if you can encourage the person to develop the answer from themselves. Doesn't mean it has to be pure coaching. Remember, I talked about the mix between enablement and instruction. You can't all be pure coaches and expect everyone to come up with all the answers. There is a space for instruction, but when you are instructing, try and be clear and always make sure that your instruction is understood by the receiver. Ask them and make sure there's a dialogue to make sure it is clear. A lot of times you dump instructions, you believe it's understood because subordinates generally, there is, in some cultures, in some areas, there's a possibility that they're nodding their head because they don't want to sound they didn't understand. Encourage that validation process and encourage the opportunity for them to ask back any doubts. Okay, that's communication. I've breezed through that because I'm aware the time is quite a bit. Any comments on communication? Okay, so what I wanted to do if I had more time is I wanted to talk about a couple of scenarios. Okay, and based on everything we have talked about, I wanted to invite a discussion on how you will deal as a boss based on everything we have discussed so far. Now the scenario is, and we might not do a lot of it, I'll keep the discussion short so we can have a general Q&A as well. So this is a typical scenario, right? So if you can see the screen, John is deeply demotivated. You got the problem child in your team. Every excuse not to finish his task, shirks work, makes excuses, stays at home, extra sick leave, all that kind of stuff. The rest of the team do not say anything publicly because they just want to carry on with their work. But it is clear he's letting the team and you down. Other managers are noticing that. They don't want him involved in their projects, and he's kind of siloed himself, and he's one of these immovable objects in your team that is not efficient, right? What do you do? All of you who are managers at some point have some versions of this employee, maybe not all the time, but at least for a while. I can't imagine anyone who's managed for a while who hasn't encountered at least a part of this scenario. So let me open up. Anyone who wants to make a couple of points. There's no right answer. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I just want to build a discussion on what works. If you can relate to some of the things we have spoken to before, great. But just a little brief discussion on what your approach is. Anyone wants to go first?
Yeah, I can.
Oh,
sure.
No, okay. After you, Dulia.
I just wanted to say this is going to take us at least 3 other sessions.
So here's, okay, it's a very valid point, Julia. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you make it very well. So let me make it simply. Can you tell me the top 2 approaches, the 2 simple things? So like I've done the presentation, there's so many things to talk about. Let's just pick 2 things that, Julia, you feel will be very useful here, and then you can go to someone else.
Well, I would ask, go for it, Daniel.
No, go. Sorry, Annie, because I don't see you talking. So.
Okay, I was just going to say that I would meet with this employee and ask him what's going on. I would, obviously I would do this in private. I don't want to, humiliate the person, but I would ask him what's going on. I would try and understand this person's perspective, his point of view, and try to figure out what's going on. Why is he not delivering as he is supposed to? If there is something lacking, tools or whatever, I will try and see how I can help this employee to deliver. So the thing is not to slap the person, on the wrist and just first of all, try to be understanding. We were talking about empathy. Try to be understanding and see how you can help support this team member and give him whatever tools he needs, or maybe it's even something personal going on in his life. So
thank you, Annie.
That's my input. Thanks.
So that's 2 things I picked up of that. One is engagement. So you articulated details of engagement, but the principle is engagement, connection, and empathy. I think those are 3 words that stood out for me as I listen through everything you described. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else wants to add to that?
So Annie, it's exactly what I wanted to say. So I think we are on par with that. Don't need to add anything.
Perfect. Anyone else wants to talk about anything else?
From my side, what I would say is understand motivation, because as we were reading on the chats as well, motivation for all of us is so different, and what motivates one of my team member may not necessarily be a motivation for somebody else. So also with Annie, that you need to understand the person where it's coming from, and maybe it's, I don't know, something very small. Also understand if the person is, I don't know, making mistakes, right? And the work, why is it making mistakes? It's not about why are you making mistakes? You shouldn't be making mistakes, etc., etc. But maybe try to go into that empathy, really connecting with the person. And maybe it's about also communication. Let's not forget. In some companies we for sure work in multicultural companies. So communication, culture, all these things needs to be connected. So it's a bit, I call it like a cocktail. So you need to find the right ingredients in order to make sure that, yeah, you give the best. But I was in one of these kind of sessions, and for my team, I'm also a coach and a mentor. And I must say, I learned something very hard, where I was investing so much time in someone, and then I was talking with this person, another coach, and what they told me was like, there is times that you need to let go, because if that person doesn't want to make that change, to make that, you're giving, you're investing, and you're trying all your best, but that person needs to do that step, that I want to be better, or I want to be better, and take those feedbacks or to the better way. But they need to do it, because you cannot change the person. They need to do that step as well. And when this other coach told me, no, you need to learn to let go, I was demotivated. I was frustrated. I was like, no, that cannot be. No. You need to learn to let go.
So explain that to us for the rest of Julia. When you say let go, what does that translate to? What does that mean?
For me, was like, you put your best effort, you try to encourage the person, to motivate with better communication, etc. You make even a plan and how to get to the next level, etc. But at one point, you need to step back and, step back, and also maybe even be a little bit transparent with the person and say, okay, you know what, we did this, we went to there, now it's up to you. And it's like, I call it in different words, it's like when, you're trying to, I don't have kids, but I have nephews and nieces. So when, you're building or you're helping your little kids walk, and you hold them and, you guide them and everything, and they fall and you go like, oh, come on, stand up, nothing happens, And at one point you need to let them go, to walk. So that is how I see it, in a very simple way. It's very difficult, because especially if you're a caring person, if you're a caring manager, if you really want your people to succeed, and you see people, they're not motivated, or they're just like, nothing happens. It's frustrating, because you think like, come on, you can be so much better. You can be brilliant. But then you have to step back and watch it.
So I love what you said, by the way. That's so, and it shows that you had this experience. And Monse, I'm going to come to that. I know what you typed in the chat. But first thing, there's two elements of that. So you, apart from so Annie bought the engagement, the connection, and the empathy. You have built on finding leverages to motivate, energizing, trying to see what are the approaches. You also made a very important point, is about your state of mind and how you feel aggressive towards addressing the situation. Make sure you're very self-aware. And you said let go we interpret it in two ways. One is let go of the emotion and the strength and everything and just take a step back. That's about self-awareness and not getting too sucked into the emotion.
Exactly.
But I think there is also an element of taking action. It has to be the right action at the end, to think of the wider team.
Absolutely.
And that's crucial. Okay, at one point, and there's no black and white line about this, as a manager, this is your challenge, is to decide where the line lies. At one point, just the status quo is not the best situation for the team. It has to address. And if the combination of all your efforts, and this is, it's a last choice, and sometimes it's not even the last choice, it might be the best first choice. But that's where it's challenging as a boss. Are you ready to take that action to fire him or to take him out of the team?
Oh, yes, without a doubt.
and that's crucial, by the way. You said that without a doubt.
No,
but people find it very difficult. I mean, come on, all of us on in this Zoom meeting, how many people do we know where this kind of a John, apologies if there's a John in this meeting, but it's a random name, how many times this John symptomatic person just carries on in the organization, in the team, and there's no one's addressing it. It just carries on, carrying on, demotivating the team, reducing the efficiency of the team. And it's horrible because the boss won't take action. So it's a common scenario. So that's also something you need to be aware of. I'm not saying that should be the first thing, but that should not be a sign of failure. You've got to think of it as the wider team. That's the thing I'd encourage you to. Again, the point, how difficult it is to manage and how challenging all these dynamics and how different it is from when you were the contributor, just writing the program or just writing those emails, just pressing those buttons, just doing those tasks. It's a lot more complex when you manage. Okay, that's one scenario. I've got one more scenario. I'll just read it out, but let's not have a discussion. I'll rather spend the last few minutes on Q&A. This is an interesting, and I just want you guys to reflect on this scenario. I know this happens not so commonly, but it has happened a lot of times. You're in a big organization. There's this young person who joins the team, and I've taken the liberty because I know it happened in my previous role, and they're extremely smart, MBA graduates, etc. You know they're very sharp. They come in, they're on a kind of a fast track, and they're part of your team for a small period of time. You know they're not going to stay there forever, but they expect extra recognition. They are always seem to be different than the rest of the tenured team in a kind of a way. Suddenly this young superstar has joined your team. How do you deal with that? It's an interesting dynamic. There's about 5 minutes left of this session, so I want to do a Q&A, but it's something I want you guys to, let's take a quick poll. How many of you relate to this Jill person that I have in this use case? Can I have a hands up or a chat saying me? I think Abdul's saying yes. I can see that. Anyone else? A hands up and say I associate or link. Monica says yes. Anyone else? Hannah says yes. Excellent. So Julia as well. So this is also another common scenario and a common mechanism. So I want, in the interest of time, I won't go into detail, but it's a very interesting dynamic here on how you treat Jill so that Jill leaves a lasting impression, and how you make sure the rest of the team is also geared up as a whole, how your team is performing optimally. Before I go into Q&A, I have put in the chat just a while ago. I'll do it again just in case people are easy. I do leave out a survey. It's a survey on this presentation on the topic. It's just a set of questions and a little open text. Please do give me your feedback. All feedback, I'd love to get it. It'll take 2 minutes. I would love if you could just spend those 2 minutes and give me that feedback at the end of the session. Okay, any final questions or comments before we wrap this up?
Me. Good evening to all. What happens if you have that kind of person with a negative approach and being the rotten apple of the team?
Yeah, and so we're going into the case straight away because I knew this was an interesting case. In hindsight, maybe I should have put this first, but the previous one is also important. Look, I don't want to be prescriptive, and that's the point. And Daniel, the troll, whose nickname is Troll on the screen, he made a very important point, and that is, I can't be prescriptive. What I will suggest will not work with Gordon Ramsay, will not work with a lot of people. So that's why it's an open discussion. I will make 2 or 3 very guiding principles. Inertia is not a status quo. Status quo and inertia is not the solution. When you think of utilization of words like negative, etc., try and also make sure you're very self-aware. Is it not your emotion that's getting carried away and labeling it that way? So take a step back and make sure you are self-aware. And once you're confident you're self-aware, make that with feedback in general conversations. Don't go looking for negative feedback, but just see what the tone of the team is. Black and white, how is your team performing with that person? Is that negativity really impacting make sure you understand. So it's about understanding the overall dynamics of the team, being very self-aware, and making sure you know when it's right not to act and when it's right to act. And really making that choice based on the data that you have collected on the points I mentioned. It's a very generic answer. Otherwise, we'll go into a very detailed discussion, and I'm sure all the managers here will have a lot of opinions and thoughts on specifics. I'm keeping it general in the interest of time, but those are the principles in general will give you the guiding light towards making it more specific to the situation. Self-awareness, impact, and making sure what's the right approach and action to take.
Yeah, and what if human resources don't even know how to be handling it? So that is very bad.
I'll do another session on HR separately, but yeah, that's a whole new dynamic. But don't forget, all of these people are stakeholders. They're all individuals. They're all trying their best. They all have their dynamics. An HR person is no different than a manager. They're all trying to manage. They're all trying to do the best. Sometimes we as individuals and bosses and managers also sometimes rush to HR is not doing their job. The analytics is not doing their job. Support is not doing their job. It's ultimately, it's all individuals. And when there's a process broken, try and resist the temptation to just park people in their boxes and say that I can't do anything. I'm just frustrated that other people can't do their stuff. Try and resist that and think of how you can do something positive.
Prakash, coming back to the question of Monica, that if somebody is a rotten employee in the team, so what should we do? We cannot throw it like a rotten apple, that employee away, we have to get, we have to take him along with us as a mentor, as a seniors, as a boss. We have to be positive with him or her, and we need to take him along with us. We cannot keep him or her separate from that. Because not all employees are star employees. You will find some lazy employees, you will find different type of employees. So there are only a couple of people who are star employees in each team or any section.
And that's fantastically said, by the way. I don't dilute or dispute any of what you said. What I'll add to what you're saying is, it's like a tool set, right? Make sure you're not emotionally attached in one way and you don't think it's your success or failure to make every individual work very well. You have to use all the tools in your disposal, almost in a neutral, dispassionate way when you're making judgments and you're looking at the tools to see what works. One tool that is there is also to take the rotten apple away from the situation. It's a tool. I'm not saying that's the right tool, but make sure you don't attach yourself and make it personal that you have to achieve success in motivating everyone and everyone's doing brilliant. Just be resistive towards making it too personal to yourself and try to be the more dispassionate manager. That's the one thing I'll add to what you're saying. I'm not diluting or disputing anything you said, by the way.
Yeah. Can I ask something?
Sure.
And then it goes to everyone. Do you think it's a good idea to hire 2 or more people that are friends? Because I had one situation where I hired 2 guys, and one was like an outstanding graphic designer, and the other one sucked. And I was like, how do I fire this guy? So, yeah. What's your opinion on that? Would you hire friends or not?
It can be advantageous in certain situations, and maybe in certain situations, it's all about how you manage the situation, Daniel. I don't think there's a standard size fits all, unfortunately. It's about, as a manager, can you understand that dynamic on how those two are? Is there something positive that can become out of that friendship? Because that means their communication is going to be strong. You can use maybe one to leverage the other. There's lots of, what are the positive things you can leverage as a team and as your business from that friendship, and look at it in a positive light. Anyone else wants
because
to make a comment on that? I mean, I know it's
yeah,
open
because
question.
I know some managers are completely against hiring friends exactly for that reason, you know.
Well, I think
First of all, that was a, I mean, poor work from the HR and the manager who selected that guy, you know. So I think the basic fault was at that time, you know, that was not a good recruitment. That at the same time you have a very star employee and you have a very bad employee. So there was some misjudgment or something wrong with that recruitment.
Interesting.
So,
That's
guys,
your
If I may
perspective.
offer,
So can I just validate? You believe that it's not good for two friends. So there's one
I don't
person
know.
and he brought his friend along.
I know that some bosses wouldn't do that.
Yeah. And that's why I was asking.
I am on the fence, you know, like
Okay.
I'm like, I don't know.
Akash,
So
if
that's
I
why
can
I-
answer, if I can offer my opinion.
Sure.
You don't hire because people are friends. You hire them because of their competencies. But what you do want, what the ultimate goal is for the team to get together and to work well together. Because what you have to remember is that people spent, well, okay, we're in COVID right now, but before COVID, pre-COVID, people spend at least 8 hours a day together, working together, which means that at the end of a week, you spend more time with your colleagues than you do your own family. So you want to make sure that the atmosphere within the team is a good one. So if people get along together, they appreciate one another, it is far better for you, for the company, than having, you know, team members who don't get along and who are in conflict.
So I think Daniel's original point was we all make friendships at work, and that's different. But I think Daniel, and I wanted to validate with EB as well.
Initial friends.
If EB believes that hiring existing friends from outside, so someone's already in your team, he's got a very close friend, his best buddy, hiring that best buddy is bad, because I think that was the premise of the original question. So EB, when you answered, you said that it's bad HR that needs to be filtered out. So are you saying that that's a bad idea?
Can I add to it actually? See, especially in the Middle East, it's the hiring happens with recommendations and friendship and all, like. So sometimes people end up having a staff who's not qualified for that designation or something, and to the point, like, okay, as a manager's friend, or maybe like a friend of the owner or whoever it is, it totally depends on the manager's personality, like how well he can manage, okay, how well he can take care of his friendship with professional life.
And Abdul, I want to really separate this out. He talked about hiring a friend when he's not competent, and that they're two different things, right? Your recruitment should be strictly competency based, but Edie was suggesting that if they are friends, and I think that's what Daniel's suggestion, they shouldn't be selected irrespective of competence. I don't think so. There are two different discussions. Because they are friends, does a lower competent person sneak in? And if that's happening, that's a failure of the recruitment process and the independence of the recruitment process. That's a separate discussion. But the original point made by Daniel / Troll was, should we even consider two friends? Even if, let's assume they are great people and both of them have equal skills. But the fact that they are old friends, should we like discard them purely on the basis of the friendship, or do we accept them? Or as Daniel says, it's neutral. And I just want to again go back to ED. He talked about HR processes. Is he saying that if they are friends, they should not be in the same team? Is that what you're saying, EB? I wanted to ask your opinion when you talked about the HR.
Yeah, first of all, my point is that, of course, there are recommendations and whatever, but when you end up with having that kind of situation where you have a one star employee and one very bad employee, so that is the fault of the manager who selected, and a fault of the HR. So they should not do it. I mean, friendship doesn't
and that's key. I get it, and that's key. The recruitment process should not be diluted. a recommendation and a friendship should not be basis of either hiring or not hiring. The recruitment process that checks compatibility, competence, etc., is crucial. Yes, Nadia, I agree. We have gone 10 minutes over. This has been a fantastic discussion. Most of you are still online, which is really good. Please, can I request you to give some feedback? And if this is great, I can do a part 2, and I want to talk about recruitment. What are good recruitment practices? How do you fire people? So maybe if you guys are interested, I'll do a part 2 about this, or I can have an open session about leadership and so on. Please put in your comments on the feedback. Also, anything you suggest for future events, I'll take your feedback. And on that note, I'll thank you all, and I'll hand it back to Nadia as well.
Nadia, you're muted. Nadia, you're muted.
I forgot about the mute. Thank you for pointing that out to me. I just wanted to say, Prakash, could you please save the chat?
I have.
Oh, great. So Kishi wanted a copy of the chat.
Okay.
I've already sent so 150 people signed up for this talk, and I've all sent them a link to your survey. So hopefully they complete it. And thank you for this chat. Not chat, I meant, sorry. Thank you for this presentation. And you can see that everybody was fascinated by the topic and had a lot to say about it.